Shottle bops. Pottle snops. Ever since those dingy shops started popping up in the avenues, I've been living large. Where's your missing husband? Maybe he fell down a magical well. Sounds far-fetched, but now I've got proof for you, sweetheart. Being a PI is all about explanations and magic. That's like having the answers to the test. Take this man who came in last week. He's down on his luck. Needs dirt on his bookie, or he'll be the buried one. Hey, buddy, you ever heard of a pixie? The thing literally smells money, okay? Go pick one up at the shuttle bop. Saddle up to Mr. Bookie, and you'll be rolling in dough, understand? Oh, and there is a finder's fee involved in the matter, mister. You've got to be sure, said the devil thickly, and grabbing a smoking lantern from beside the grave, he thrust it down into the open casket. A shrill scream tore through the night air as he slumped over, dead. Instead of the heavy features of the man he had filled, Reginald Van Dusen, there was a sudden ripple of discordant music from the loudspeaker, and then the unctuous voice of the devil broke in. The coroner called it suicide. In a way, I suppose it was. The moral? Only this. Dear friends, if you should ever be walking through a strange part of town and come upon a little shop you've never seen before, especially a little shop with a sign in the window that says, Shuttle Bop, we sell Thimgs, or something equally ridiculous. Remember the case of the cluttered coffin, and run. Don't walk to the nearest morgue, children. You must run into the grave and fall to dusty death. No, my customers will fly from the grave. Fly like baby birds from the nest. Death! Your obituary is being written. As the maniacal laughter trailed away, the background music surged up and then skittered out of hearing to make way for the announcer. He only managed to get 3 words out before Albert Blotz, owner, manager, sole agent of worldwide investigations, reached over, turned off the little radio that stood on the window beside his desk. Boy, he said, that was really something, eh, Janie? Janie, the little girl behind the typist's desk, the other side of the dingy office, looked up. What? A program. Wasn't it something? Sometimes I get so invested it almost seems real. Sometimes stories are really just there to suck you in, you know, or something. What's the point of these stories? Beats me. I wasn't listening. Somebody has to get work done around here. She pulled a letter out of her correspondence basket and waved it in the air. Like, this Harris letter. It's been sitting here for a month. After spending some guy's dough, the least you can do is write him an answer. The fat man looked blank. Harris? Who's Harris? The fellow in Denver who wanted you to investigate everybody in New York. Everybody in New York who had a big and unexpected windfall within the past 2 years, remember? And he meant everybody. Blotz snorted impatiently. That's nuts. Tell him anything. I mean, I don't know, just make up something that sounds weird enough to be true. Give me a for instance. Tell him... Blotz leaned heavily back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Tell him the worldwide investigations assigned its best operatives to the case. And that in 16 cases out of 20... No, better make it 29 out of 44. That way, he'll really feel he's getting his money's worth. Or if you want me to pin a shuttle, Bob, we could keep doing that. Maybe we can say we've got a leprechaun on the case. I don't know. No. This guy won't go for the funny stuff. All right. In 29 out of 44 cases. Is that what you said? And don't rush it, okay? Blotz pulled a bottle of cheap blend out of his drawer, and eyed the remaining inch regretfully. There's always less than you want. You know the doctor said your heart wouldn't take much more of that stuff. The fat man shrugged, tossed the liquor down. As his eyes wandered around the office in search of inspiration, they came to rest on the radio. That's it! What's it? The devil. Once crime pays, somebody but the actors and the scriptwriters. Tell Harris that in whatever it was, out of whatever it was cases, the individuals concerned visited these small shops, right? They never noticed before. They never noticed these shops. They sold odd objects whose nature they refused to reveal. And there's an old man in there, right? Right. So everybody goes in the store. They get the little trinket, I don't know, make it a dice, I don't know. And boom, they're richer than God. Remember to thank him for putting our noses on this case. Thank him over and over again. Jenny looked up. Is that all? Nah. We need a clincher. How's this? In each case, when they went back and tried to find the shop, it had disappeared. There was just a brick wall where the store once was. How do you find a store like that? Now that's a question we could answer for a little bit more cash, do you see? Maybe you should just try writing radio scripts yourself. Too much work. I like the mail-order detective business a lot better. He looked regretful. Then he looked regretfully at the empty bottle, then back at Janie. Don't forget to tell that yokel that for 5 bills, our magical investigation services will find him the shop. And hey, buy him one of those dingbat little trinkets too, if he's ready to invest. We could franchise these things. Where there's not a brick wall. Janie's tips tightened. Doesn't your conscience ever bother you? If it weren't for the suckers, I'd have to work for a living. Just the way it's a breeze. Some old dame in podunk hasn't heard of a kid since he was off of the big city and gets worried about him. He doesn't answer her letters. And then one day she sees my ad in the Podunk Gazette. Sends me $50 to go look for him. What's the problem with that? I don't know. Mine bothers me. Every day I work here, I feel dirtier. And then quit. I've been thinking of that. At least I'd be able to sleep nights. Yeah, but you wouldn't be eating so regular. Face it, kid. Nobody is going to hire a gimpy sparrow like you unless he's a big-hearted guy like me. How long we been going together? Almost 27 years. There ain't many partnerships around that have lasted that long, huh? Janie looked from to the pair of worn crutches that leaned against the wall. Yeah, there sure ain't. She started punching out the letter to Harris. Mr. Blott's pulse was finally back to normal. He still couldn't tear his eyes away from the crisp green slip of paper that bore the magic figures 500 and the name Denver Bank. He bit. He really bit. May wonders, suckers never cease. And he rubbed his fat hands together nervously. I better get this to the bank and cash it before something happens. I'd rather be dead and poor than rich and alive. Half an hour later, he was back, carefully stacking bottles of bonded bourbon into his desk. When they were arranged to his satisfaction, he leaned back, hoisted his feet on the desk. "Take a letter to Harris." Janie obediently took out the shorthand pad. Usual heading, something like this. "Pursuant to your instructions, my agent and all the major cities have been instructed to check for little shops they don't remember having seen before. They are to be especially alert for basement stores with dusty signs in the windows and wordings like, 'We sell Thimgs, Shuttlebop.' Upon discovery, they are to enter immediately. If a small-aged man appears from the rear of the shop and presses them to buy something, they are to do so. Once they leave, they are to make careful note of the shop's location and walls around the block. If when they return the shop has disappeared, they are immediately to send their purchase to you, sir. The riches of the world are soon to be yours." Blotz paused, took a bottle out of his drawer and uncapped it. "Put something in about unexpectedly heavy expenses at the end. If we play this right, we might be able to tap this sucker again. Say something like, 'With all the wealth you'll soon obtain.' Play into his fantasy a little bit. Playing us feels like a reward to him, you see? And in the meantime, we'd better have something ready to send him just in case." "What kind of something?" "Who cares? Go over on 3rd and prowl some of those Shuttlebops. Pick up something small. They'll keep the postage down. Trying to find something that doesn't do all that much, okay? I don't want him floating through the sky when he puts his ring on, you know?" The little secretary pulled herself painfully to her feet, draped threadbare coat over her humped back, and took her crutches beside her typing desk. "Just don't go over $1, okay? This is an investment." She started toward the door, and then turned and stood blinking at him through the thick lensed glasses that made her eyes appear twice the normal size. "What's the matter?" "I haven't got $1. And with a painful expression on his face, he fumbled in an old coin purse, and he reluctantly pulled out a quarter, then another, and then finally another. "Here. See what you can do for 75 cents, that's all I got. After this score, though, I swear." Blotz was deep in his bottle when Janie came back hobbling with a small piece of paper, a wrapped package on his desk. "Any change?" She shook her head. "It was funny. I mean, after what you said about shuttles and Thimgs." "Well, open it up. Let's see what Harris is getting for his money."
All this shop had in front was one sign. Like you said, it said Thimgs. Like with the M, Thimgs. Stupidest word I ever heard.
"Yeah, I know the poor bastard that owns it. Timmy Thimgs. Or maybe Johnny Thimgs, or Edward Thimgs. Edward Thimgs has a bit of a ring to it. Some people just have funny names. Open it." With fingers that trembled slightly, she tore off the brown paper wrapping. Inside was a small corroded brass cylinder that on first glance looked like an old plumbing fixture. 75 cents for that? They saw you coming, kid. It's not magic. It's a piece from a toilet. Well, hey, bet Mr. Smarty Pants Moneybags won't know. And he picked it up and turned it over in his hand. On second look, he realized there was more to it than he first had thought. Through the heavy green patina, he made out a series of strange characters. At one end was a knob that seemed to be made out of a slightly different metal than the cylinder proper. Wait a minute. What is this thing? Like for one of those fancy toilets?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Blotz frowned and took hold of the knob. He was about to twist it when a sudden thought occurred to him. It might explode or do something equally unpleasant. Hey, you try it. I can't get it, it's, stuck. She reached out a hand and then jerked it back. I'm not doing that. The man said, Hey, I'm the boss, right? Yeah, the whole operation goes up. I don't want to have to order you to do nothing, but it would be logical for you to just... She took the cylinder and twisted the knob. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with an odd flickering, she vanished. Before Blotz had a chance to react properly to the sudden emptiness of the office, she was back. At least a not very reasonable facsimile was. She was, and the realization hit. Blotz felt like a hammer blow. It hit his head. She looked 27 years younger. She looked like the day she first walked into the office. Walking tall, no need for crutches. All boosted. All the wrinkles turned into smooth, pampered skin. Now this was something. The first thing she did was pull off her thick lens glasses and throw them in the wastebasket. And the first thing Blotz did was grab a bottle out of his desk. He took several long gulps, shook his head, and shuddered. Well, it's when you're half drunk that things get twisty. I'm just gonna sit here with my eyes shut until I'm drunk enough to get back to normal. I mean, I have to be wasted, right? Toilets aren't time machines, I can tell you that. And he counted to 20 slowly as the fireball in his stomach expanded and trickled a semi-sense of well-being through his extremities. Then, as the nightmare slowly dispelled, he let out a long sigh of relief and opened his eyes. She was still there. There was a strange smile on her face he didn't like. Youth with the cracks of age. You're just standing there. What's up? Blotz's vocal cord stopped operating and just sat there and quivered. She laid the little bronze cylinder down on the desk in front of him. Here. You can go there too if you want. Where? I don't know. It's someplace else. A tremendous place with rooms and whirring machines. And there's a man there. And he asked me what I wanted and I told him. So we did a little re-editing. And here I am. And you can do it too. All you need is the little trinket. Magic. Black magic, that's what it is. If it were white magic, that'd be pretty cool too. I mean, there'd be no moral quandary or whatever if it were white magic. What were you going to say? Magic has a funny way of working. Do you want to know what I was thinking after the little man asked me what I wanted? Are you sure you're alright? You're acting a little spaced out here. I was thinking that in spite of the way things look, there's just one thing you can always count on. Yeah. People always end up getting what's coming to them. Blotz let out a half-hysterical laugh. People always get what they have coming, huh? Then what's mine? Why does a guy with my brains have to scrabble out a living with a two-bit outfit like this? Listen, I know all the lies wears on you, but that's all this business is. It's stories. Stalk someone for long enough and a pattern emerges. And what does the pattern mean? Whatever story I say it means. Why did he go to the hotel? Could be a million reasons. Here's one, the best one I can think of. See, it's all the same, has been from the very beginning. He raved on for a minute, then got control of himself. The liquor helped. After he'd taken a couple more gulps from his bottle, he still couldn't look at what had happened squarely in the face. With the abatement of the first shock came a gradual return of the old sense of mastery that had made him hire Janie rather than some less experienced typist. As an awareness of the physical changes that had taken place began to grow, he found his eyes going over her, remembering the young woman he hired all those years ago. "You know, Janie, seeing it was my money that got you what you got, it kind of makes me the copyright owner, doesn't it? I mean, you know that was my 75 cents, so I'm the sole investor in this little campaign." When he put the flabby arm around her, she didn't pull away, but stared at him icily. "What if we just copy this thing? Figure out how it works. I mean, think of the money then. One spin of the magical trinket, and you'll live forever. I mean, I could charge anything I wanted for that. Who knew 75 cents could buy a penthouse suite, huh, sugar?" "Do you want to meet him?" she said in a strange voice. She acted as if he were still on the other side of the room. "It took more courage than I thought I had in me, but I asked him to give me just what I deserved." "Him? What? Oh, the shop owner, the old guy. Hey, you're talking pretty weird. I mean, you look incredible. Like literally 27 years younger. You don't have the crutches on. You could dance all around the room if you wanted." "I can dance a longer distance than that. That was the chance I was taking." She said it again in a strange, distant voice. She shrugged herself free. As Blotz grunted and grabbed for her, he felt a sudden wrenching, stabbing pain lance through his chest, and then with no transition at all, he found himself falling. He slumped against the desk and his plump fingers scrabbled around the smooth surface, trying to secure a hold that would keep him from plummeting down in the darkness. They touched the worn bronze cylinders, and as he slid on down, face purple, eyeballs bulging, more through instinct than conscious volition, he found and twisted the serrated knob at one end. There was an immediate release, a translation into someplace else. And he was standing again. Pain was gone, except for a tiny glowing spot in front of him. It was darker than he had seen ever before in his life. "Janie? Janie, what's happening to me? What's happening to me?" His voice echoed metallically from distant walls. He turned to run, but there was no place to run to, only darkness. He had a sudden vision of unseen pits, crevices, and froze where he stood. And then, unable to stand with his own immobility, he inched cautiously inward to the tiny spot of light, testing whatever it was under his feet with each sliding step. At last, he was able to touch it. A cold, luminous circle set in a smooth steel wall at chest height. And as he moved his arm toward it, the hand that still held the bronze cylinders jerked forward of its own volition, pulling his arms with it, and plunged into the glowing circle. There was a clicking of relays, and then glaring overhead lights went on. He had been wise to check his footing. He was standing on a catwalk that arched dizzily over a severely acre expanse of strange, whirring machinery, like Janie had said. And there were no guardrails, only a narrow tongue of metal that stretched out from some spot lost in the murky distance, until it reached the smooth metal wall before which he stood. And then with a whining sound, a door opened in front of him. An invisible force pushed him through, and he found himself in a great vault-like room, whose walls were covered with countless, tiny winking lights. They banked on banks of intricate controls. And and as the door clanged shut behind him, a little ball of shimmering light bounced across the floor toward him, expanded, wavered, and then suddenly took the shape of a harassed-faced little man, with burning, deep-set eyes and a long, white beard.
Hey, who are you? Well, out with it,
Blot said impatiently. Then there was no sound for a minute. Blotz didn't say anything, the man didn't say anything. Blotz couldn't. When he finally got partial control of his vocal cords, all that came out was an almost incoherent series of who's, what's, and how's, and the little man interrupted him with an impatient gesture. Stop sputtering. I'm tired of sputtering. This may be new to you, but it isn't for me. You're the 436,000th mortal to get a hold of one of the keys, one of the great keys. And you're also the 433,000th to sputter. Hey, why does it matter to you, old guy? Blotz was sparring for enough time to get his own thinking organized. What steadied him was the thought that, fantastic as all this was, Janie had been here before, and Janie had somehow managed to snag herself a jackpot. His first job was to find out enough about the situation to angle it around to his own advantage. Yes, these are mysterious ways. It's a special department in the Home Office that specializes in making life more complicated for the Guardians, you see. I'm one of those Guardians. After reward and punishment, switched their records section over to the complete automatic operation. Somebody in what they call the MW came up with a bright idea that humans still have some sort of a chance for personal attention. So, they made up a few widgets, like the one you got hold of. Scattered them around, random. Not that you've got much. When you do get a hold of one, all that comes with it is the right to a little personal re-editing of your future, and even that is controlled by the Prime Directive, of course. Blotz narrowed his eyes slightly. So he had a right to something, Ace. He had something coming they had to give him. He thought of Janie's sudden metamorphosis. The girl that was here before. Is what happened to her what you call re-editing? Is that how she looked 30 years younger than the moment she left? And the little man nodded. Well, and I got a right to the same, he said. I mean, you can make me look the way I'd like to instead of the way I do, huh? I mean, heck, go to town. I don't care about this old mug edit and whatever hot hunk you want. I'll make do with whatever face you want to give me. But no buts. I want what I got a right to. You said I had a right to it. You magic fellas are all the same with the big speeches, I'm telling you. I'm the customer now. You do right by me, I do right by you. You get to work on that tape of mine, re-editing mine. Fix it so it'll have as much on the ball as the male side as Janie has on the female. Hey, while you're at it, re-edit me a nice fat bankroll. Me, I like to travel first class, you see. Maybe I could get a house on the beach in Maui or something. Never been to Maui. He thought for a moment, then held up a restraining hand. Hey, but don't start tinkering until I give you the word.
It ain't every day that a guy gets a chance to rebuild himself from the ground up. I want to be sure that I get all the little details right, you understand? But, continued the Guardian, as if the interruption had never occurred, re-editing, in your case, wouldn't have much point. The heart attacks you were having just before the key brought you here was a signal, you see. A signal, a warning. The tape which had been recording significant events of your life was just about to reach its end, you see. After a few minutes, your return, the automatic rewind will cut in, and then your spool will be removed from the recorder, sent over to reward and punishment for processing. Blotz had always considered himself an atheist, more in self-defense than anything else. The thoughts of a superior something someplace, taking personal note of each of his actions for purposes of future judgment, was one that he had never cared to contemplate. He much preferred the feeling of immunity that came with the belief that man is simply an electrochemical machine that returns to its original components when it finally wears out. But in the age of magic, things tend to change. And now, the little man's casual reference to something coming after was disturbing enough to almost override the shock caused by the announcement of his almost imminent death. What's processing? What are they gonna do to me? A little alakazam? A smoke? What? Instead of answering, the Guardian walked over to a control panel, punched a series of buttons. A moment later, a large screen flew up over his head. The playback starts here. The screen flickered and then steadied to show a hospital delivery room with a woman giving birth. Okay, what's all this got to do with me? R&R have to start their processing someplace. In your case, I imagine some special arrangements have been made. They had been. Blotz started making little mewling noises. The little man reached forward and turned a knob, and the screen went dark. Had enough? Or we could go through your kindergarten if you like that. Your little middle school. How about your first day on the job? Maybe we could watch that. Yeah. Go ahead and hit the high spots, I guess. Let's treat this like a night at the movies. My whole life blown up on the silver screen. You know, some men would kill for this. This is pretty cool magic, fella. Kinda disconcerting with the whole omniscience, but price of admission and all that? Hey, you get a thumbs up from me. What? Why did you show me all that? Said Blotz when it was finally over. It was kinda nice remembering and such, but I mean, this is all pretty dramatic. I mean, why can't you just pop some smoke and kablooey? I'm young again. Because the ethical universe is just as orderly as the physical one. For each action, there is an equal and contrary, though delayed, reaction. Always in the past, there had been something Blotz could twist to his advantage. And the present had to be the same. There had to be an angle here. There had to be, if he couldn't be re-edited, which is why this guy seemed to be saying, there had to be something else he could do. He ran over the events of the past quarter hour, past quarter century. He tried to find a pattern. Re-editing. There had to be something in the re-editing. Look, you can change things, right? You did it for Jamie. Why can't you go back over my tape? Just make it a little longer. I mean, people stick film together, right? That's what editing is. Because the past cannot be changed. The re-editing that you have a right to applies only to the future. And as I've already pointed out, yours is so limited that any adjustment I can make might have very little meaning to you, you see. Blotz took a deep breath and held it. He couldn't afford to panic, not now. But where was the angle? Given that the past couldn't be changed, given that once he returned to Earth, he had only a half minute of his life left, what then? How could a tape be kept for an ending? How could a movie run on forever? Say he'd bugged a bedroom to collect evidence for a divorces case. Say he didn't want to miss recording a single squeak. Maybe if he... Of course. Sir? Sir, I've got a job for you. I want you to do some splicing. The little man looked at him in obvious bewilderment. Splicing. Blotz was still shaky, but he was beginning to enjoy himself. That's what I said. It just occurred to me. If you spliced a second tape onto the end of this one, it's just about finished right here. I could keep on living. And after your little movie, keeping on living is what I want to do. So splicing, it can be done, can't it? And I mean it's magic. There's no rules, so of course it can be done. Of course it can be done, right? It was the Guardian's turn to sputter. Can. Of course it can, but I'm not about to begin with. Your old body is just worn out. I'd have to hunt you up a new one. Your friend's lifespan is going to be much longer, so I could use her vitality. You, sir, are the walking dead. Get it through your head. So what? The thing I want to hang on is the me, the part that does the feeling, the thinking, the part that knows stuff. I mean, you gotta help me. Shuttlebots help everybody. I don't want to wake up stiffer than a drink after all this is over. I came up with the brass ring, Buster. I've got a free ride coming. And I'm the one with the power here. I have the object. And he waved the bronze cylinder under the little man's nose. And he stopped suddenly, looked in awe. A free ride. And why only when I can keep on swapping horses? Why, if you keep on splicing, listen, here's the word. Every time the tape that's running through the recorder is about to reach its end, I want a new one patched on. And make sure that each body I get is well-heeled, healthy, and handsome. Like I said before, I like to travel first class. Maybe I'll see you in France in about 300 years, Japan in 900, Rome in the year 3000. Hey, or maybe I'm just dreaming big, huh? The little man seemed to be on the verge of annoyance. Well, that's not a good idea. It's not a good idea at all. I can barely keep up with my work as it is, and if I have to... But you don't have to. Whether you like it or not, I just beat the system. Me, little Blotz, the guy that used to have the work, penny-aid swindles just to keep eating, no more. What was chalked up against me before is peanuts compared to what's coming. And you know why? The Lord above can't process me until my tape comes to an end. And it ain't never ending. But get going. The Guardian threw up his hands in defeat. It's going to make a lot of extra work for me, but if you're really... Sure, I insist. And holding resolutely onto the cylinder. I got it made. We should figure out a whole itinerary while we're doing it. Think tide to tide in that little office. Not tied down by the limits of the lifespan. And I could take her with me. You can't swindle a swindler. The little machine that kept track of Mr. Blotz's actions hesitated momentarily when it came to the splice. And then gave a loud click. Click. And he awoke to something heavy pressing on his chest. An angry buzzing. Blotz. No longer Blotz as far as externals went. opened sleepy eyes and blinked up at the ugly wedge-shaped head that had reared back ready to strike. Why didn't you tell me I was expecting company? He rolled, turned, and jostled, as if in a terrible dream. A dream that lasted and lasted and lasted. And the involuntary movement that was the prelude to agony was accompanied by a momentary feeling of relief. Once again, he felt like he was falling. At least before too long, it would be over. But with a final convulsion, there came another click, and he felt strange. And he wanted to get out of there. He was struggling. With a convulsive kick, he brought himself to the surface, spat out a mouthful of water. Wasn't he still on the bed? He paddled in an aimless circle, unable to strike out because of the splintered rib that laced into one lung. It was all becoming real. And almost an hour passed. The first black dorsal fin became circling curiously. What is this? This wasn't part of the deal. What is this? The Guardian yawned as he looked around for another bit of tape to splice on the one that was almost finished. And boom! Just like that, the dying man was transported. Young, healthy, handsome. There were enough odd ends around so that Blotz would never have to worry about dying. Never in a million years. Not dying. Not dying, though. That can be a worm all itself. He threw out the bottle. At least for a while, there wouldn't be any crutches.